The sun was nearly at the horizon. The pink circle of light slid slowly down the side of the red barrier as it faded into non-existence. He sat on the piles of trash that littered the periphery of the town while he pictured the pink circle as a golden sun, unhindered by the opacity of the barrier, gliding gently down the sides of a blue sky. As the final signs of sunlight were replaced by the soft, natural glow of the barrier dome, he continued to picture the world of endless green grass and mountains that he knew must lay beyond. The others dismissed these concepts as myths, preposterous stories manufactured to entertain the ignorance of children. They believed that the concrete of the town and the barrier enclosing it were all that there was, just an island of rock floating in void. The town inside of the barrier was all that they knew and all that they wanted to know, but he was not like them. He knew better. He knew that the pink circle of light was only a faint sign of something else, something beyond the barrier, trying to shine through. His thoughts of the world past the barrier carried his gaze to the cave, his only chance at proving the myths to be true, his only chance at escaping the internment of the barrier, his only chance at freedom. The cave was his obsession. It had become his bedroom every night and his restlessness every day. For the past 4 years, it was as if the cave was all that he knew. He lazily climbed to his feet, walked to the opening of the cave, and stood, studying the steep downward slope of its entrance as it disappeared into the darkness underground. He recalled the first moment that he had seen the cave. Nothing more than a large hole in the stone ground, only about 30 feet away from the barrier. The hole had led to a small cavern, not even the size of his bedroom. In the 4 years since then, it had developed into an enormous aperture with easier access and much more space. Most importantly, however, was the tunnel, heading directly toward the barrier. He bent down and grabbed a few sheets of crumpled paper and 5 pieces of shattered wood from the piles that lay near the cave entrance. With the materials in his arms, he lumbered through the mouth of the cave into the main cavern. In the center of the cavern, he squatted down and arranged the sticks into a pyramid around the paper. From his jacket, he produced a match, which he instinctively struck on the ground as soon as it had escaped the confines of his pocket. He gently maneuvered the match to the wad of paper, which caught fire immediately after contact. As the fire spread across the paper and onto the wood, it produced a dim orange light that slowly replaced the darkness of the room, illuminating the burnt wood and charcoal that littered the cavern floor. At the wall of the cavern, opposite the entrance, was the tunnel, a gaping hole in the otherwise sheer wall of stone. Last time he had measured, the tunnel was just over 25 feet long. By now, he estimated that it was nearing 30, leaving what could only be a few inches remaining until he reached the plane of the barrier. He was close. Propped up against the stone wall were his collection of tools, odd combinations of broken machinery found amongst the piles of trash, wrapped together with bits of wire. He tiredly walked over to the collection and grabbed a dented metal pipe with a metal wedge latched on the side. With his tool in hand, he walked to the end of the tunnel until the stone wall was directly in front of him. The dim glow from the fire cast his shadow on the rocky surface of stone as he lifted the wedge of his tool above his shoulder and began slamming it against the wall, breaking off tiny chunks of stone with each blast. As he continued to repeatedly batter the stone, he imagined himself breaking through to the other side, after he had passed the plane of the barrier, the wedge of his tool hitting the wall and going straight through. He would pull his tool out of the wall and be blinded by the blazing light of the sun, shining through the hole in the wall. This time, unhindered by the barrier, it would not glow a dull pink, but shine a brilliant gold. Then he would know that he had finally done it. After years of testing the barrier, he will have bested it. He will have passed underneath. With his new discovery, he will return to the town and inform the others that the myths were true, that he was right. The others will follow him under the barrier, through his tunnel, into the land where the ground was not just stone covered in trash, but a soft dirt covered in grass, with mountains and rivers. They would come across new people, forms of life unlike their own. It might take them a bit of time to get used to, but eventually they would all become familiar with the landscape beyond the barrier, refusing to return to the meaningless lives that they had led before. And the others would smile. Except this time they would not smile with the joy of hollow ignorance that they did now. No. They would smile with the joy of enlightenment. The entire wall shattered. The wall in front of him was quickly sucked away from the tunnel and him along with it. For a few moments all he could see was blackness. He could see himself and a few floating fragments of rock that had once been the end of the tunnel. But there was nothing else in view. It was just him, floating in void. The coldness began to overcome him. He saw something in his peripheral vision and did what he could to turn his body. He saw an island of rock floating in the void. Atop that island was a red dome, radiating a soft, natural light into the endless darkness that surrounded it. In the side of the island of rock, he saw an opening, which undoubtedly led to a tunnel, which led to a cavern, where a pile of burnt logs sat as the only remaining indicator of the fire that had inevitably been blown out. He began to lose feeling in his body, and his vision was failing. As he was breathing his final breaths, he saw a pink circle of light crawl up the opposite side of the barrier. The sun was rising on the town where he had lived, the pink sun, not a sign of anything beyond the barrier. He thought about the bright golden sun, the soft dirt and green grass, the mountains, the rivers, the myths. He imagined those preposterous stories, manufactured for the ignorance of children, as he slowly faded into non-existence.